Question: as the Ukraine conflict continues, how different is Russia's position than in 2022, and how are the costs of conflict being weighed against the progress made toward strategic objectives? Answer: our position is widely known and remains unchanged. Russia is open to a politico-diplomatic settlement that should remove the root causes of the crisis. It should aim to end the conflict rather than achieve a ceasefire. The West should stop supplying weapons, and Kiev should end the hostilities. Ukraine should return to its neutral, non-bloc and non-nuclear status, protect the Russian language and respect the rights and freedoms of its citizens. The Istanbul Agreements, initialed on the 29th of March 2022 by the Russian and Ukrainian delegations, could serve as a basis for the settlement. They provide for Kiev's refusal to join NATO and contain security guarantees for Ukraine while recognizing the realities on the ground at that moment. Needless to say, in over 2 years, these realities have considerably changed, including in legal terms. On the 14th of June, Russian President Vladimir Putin listed prerequisites for the settlement as follows: complete AFU withdrawal from the DPR, LPR, Zaporozhye and Kherson Oblasts, recognition of territorial realities as enshrined in the Russian constitution, neutral, non-bloc, non-nuclear status for Ukraine, its demilitarization and denazification, securing the rights, freedoms and interests of Russian-speaking citizens, and removal of all sanctions against Russia. Kiev responded to this statement by an armed incursion into the Kursk Oblast on the 6th of August. Its patrons, the U.S. and other NATO countries, seek to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia. Under the circumstances, we have no choice but to continue our special military operation until the threats posed by Ukraine are removed. The costs of the conflict are greatest for Ukrainians, who are ruthlessly pushed by their own authorities to the war to be slaughtered there. For Russia, it is about defending its people and vital security interests. Unlike Russia, the US keeps ranting about some sort of rules, way of life and the like, apparently poorly understanding where Ukraine is and what the stakes in this war are. Question: how likely do you think it is that a military or diplomatic solution can be achieved? Or do you see a greater risk of the conflict spiraling into something even larger, with Ukrainian forces receiving more advanced NATO weaponry and entering Russian territory? Answer: making guesses is not my job. And what I want to say is that we have been trying to extinguish this crisis for more than a decade, yet each time we put to paper agreements that suit everyone, Kiev and its masters would backpedal. This exactly happened to the agreement reached in February 2014. It was trampled on by the opposition that committed a coup with the US support. A year later, the Minsk agreements endorsed by the UN Security Council were concluded. These were also sabotaged during 7 years, and the leaders of Ukraine, Germany and France, who had signed the document, bragged afterwards that they had never intended to fulfill it. The document, initialed in Istanbul in late March 2022, was never signed by Zelensky at the insistence of his Western supervisors, in particular the then British Prime Minister. At present, as far as we can see, restoring peace is not part of our adversary's plan. Zelensky has not revoked his decree banning negotiations with Moscow. Washington and its NATO allies provide political, military and financial support to Kiev so that the war would go on. They are discussing authorizing the AFU to use Western long-range missiles to strike deep into Russian territory. Playing with fire in this way may lead to dangerous consequences. As stated by President Putin, we will take adequate decisions based on our understanding of the threats posed by the West. It is up to you to make conclusions. Question: what concrete plans does Russia have in line with its strategic partnerships with China and other powers to achieve changes in the current world order? And how do you expect these ambitions to play out in areas of intense competition and conflict, including the Middle East? Answer: what we have in mind is that the world order needs be adjusted to the current realities. Today, the world is living through the multipolar moment. Shifting towards the multipolar world order is a natural part of power rebalancing, which reflects objective changes in the world economy, finance, and geopolitics. The West waited longer than the others, yet it has also started to realize that this process is irreversible. We are talking about strengthening new centers of power and decision-making in the global South and East. Instead of seeking hegemony, these centers acknowledge the importance of sovereign equality and civilizational diversity and support mutually beneficial cooperation and respect for each other's interests. Multipolarity manifests itself in the increasing role of regional associations such as the EE, USGO, ASEAN, African Union, CELAC and others. BRICS has become a model of multilateral diplomacy. The UN should remain a forum for aligning the interests of all the countries. We believe that all states, including the United States, should comply with their obligations on an equal basis with others, rather than disguise their legal nihilism with mantras of their exceptionality. Here we are supported by the majority of countries which see how international law is violated with complete impunity in the Gaza Strip and Lebanon, just the way it had earlier been violated in Kosovo, Iraq, Libya, and many other places. Our Chinese partners can answer for themselves, but I think and I know that they share our main point, the understanding that security and development are inseparable and indivisible, and that as long as the West continues seeking dominance, the ideals of peace set forth in the Charter of the United Nations will remain a dead letter. Question: what impact do you expect the US presidential election to have on Russia-US relations if Donald Trump wins or if Kamala Harris wins? And how is Russia preparing for either scenario? Answer: generally speaking, the outcome of this election makes no difference to us, as the two parties have reached a consensus as to countering Russia. In case there are political changes in the United States and new proposals to us, we will be ready to consider them and decide whether they meet our interests. At all events, we will promote Russia's interests decisively, especially as far as its national security is concerned. On the whole, it would be natural for the White House resident, no matter who they are, to mind their domestic business rather than looking for adventures tens of thousands of miles away from American coasts. I am confident that US electors think the same.